If your parents ever called you a failure, what would you do when they had to bow their heads and beg you to save the empire they valued more than you? This isn't just a story of revenge. This is how someone cast aside turned dreams into leverage to hold the power their family once stripped away. And trust me, you'll want to hear every second until the end. My name is Alexandra Hamilton, though everyone calls me Alex. The irony of sharing a surname with one of America's founding fathers wasn't lost on me, especially when my own family founded their empire on similar principles of legacy, honor, and relentless ambition. Hamilton and Reed had been a cornerstone of Boston's legal and financial elite for 3 generations, and I was supposed to be the 4th. The mahogany-paneled offices of our family firm had witnessed billion-dollar mergers, landmark legal victories, and the kind of handshake deals that shaped industries. My grandfather, William Hamilton, had built it from nothing in the 1960s, partnering with his best friend Marcus Reed. Together, they created more than a company, they forged a dynasty. I grew up in those offices. While other kids played in sandboxes, I built towers with legal briefs. When my classmates collected baseball cards, I memorized the names of Fortune 500 CEOs who walked through our doors. My parents, Richard and Victoria Hamilton, groomed me from birth to take my place in the succession line. Harvard Law was already circled on my life's roadmap before I could even read. But here's the thing about predetermined paths. Sometimes the person meant to walk them has other plans. The summer before my senior year at prep school, everything changed. While interning at the firm, I stumbled into the IT department during a system crash. Our tech team was panicking over a ransomware attack that had locked critical client files. The head of IT was on vacation, and the junior staff looked like deer in headlights. I don't know what possessed me, but I sat down at one of the terminals. Years of secretly teaching myself to code in my bedroom after mandatory violin practice suddenly had purpose. Within 4 hours, I'd not only isolated the malware, but recovered 90% of the encrypted data through a backdoor I discovered in the system architecture. The IT team stared at me like I'd performed magic. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alive. Not the manufactured satisfaction of meeting my parents' expectations, but genuine, electric joy. That night, I went home and made a decision that would shatter my family's perfectly crafted plans. Computer science. My mother's voice could have frozen hell itself. We were seated at our usual table at the Ritz-Carlton, having our monthly family strategy dinner. You want to throw away your acceptance to Harvard Law for computer science? My father set down his whiskey with the kind of controlled precision that preceded his courtroom demolitions. Alexandra, we've invested 18 years preparing you for leadership at Hamilton and Reed. This isn't a hobby you pursue. This is your heritage. Maybe I don't want your heritage, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Maybe I want to build something of my own. Victoria's laugh was sharp enough to draw blood. Build something with what? Playing video games, writing little programs. The real world doesn't run on dreams, Alexandra. It runs on power, connections, and capital, all of which we've provided for you. Then maybe it's time I provided for myself. The silence that followed could have suffocated a lesser person. My younger brother, James, the spare heir who'd always resented living in my shadow, smirked from across the table. My parents exchanged a look I'd seen them share in court, the kind that preceded total annihilation of their opposition. If you walk away from Harvard Law, my father said slowly, each word a nail in a coffin. You walk away from this family. No trust fund, no connections, no safety net. You'll be just another naive kid with delusions of grandeur in a city full of them. So be it. 2 weeks later, I stood in our circular driveway with a backpack containing everything I owned that I'd actually bought myself, which wasn't much. Rain hammered the limestone facade of our Beacon Hill mansion, but I didn't run for cover. I wanted to remember this moment with perfect clarity. My parents stood in the doorway, dry and dignified under the portico. Victoria's expression could have been carved from marble. Richard looked at me the way he looked at failed investments, with cold dismissal. You'll come crawling back, my mother said, her voice carrying over the storm. When you're hungry. When you're failing, when reality crushes those childish dreams, you'll beg us to take you back. And we might not, my father added. Every family has its failures, Alexandra. We just never expected ours to choose her fate. I shouldered my backpack and turned toward the gate. Then at least this failure chose freely. I walked into that storm without looking back, leaving behind 18 years of privilege and stepping into a future I'd have to build with my own hands. The rain soaked through my jacket within minutes, but I'd never felt cleaner. Sarah Kim found me at her apartment door at midnight, looking like a drowned rat with a laptop bag and determination. We'd been friends since freshman year at prep school, the only two scholarship kids in a sea of trust fund babies. She took one look at me and pulled me inside without questions. "Guest room's yours as long as you need it," she said, handing me a towel. Though fair warning, my roommate plays death metal at weird hours. "Better than the sound of my mother's disappointment," I replied, managing a weak smile. Sarah's apartment in Alston was a universe away from Beacon Hill. 5 roommates crammed into a space smaller than my childhood bedroom, mismatched furniture held together with duct tape and hope, and a kitchen that always smelled vaguely of someone's failed cooking experiment. It was perfect. I got 3 jobs within a week: mornings at a bookstore, afternoons debugging code for cash on freelance sites, and nights serving overpriced coffee to hipsters. Every spare moment between shifts, I was learning. Online courses, YouTube tutorials, Stack Overflow threads. I absorbed it all like a sponge desperate for water. My workspace was a card table in Sarah's room, surrounded by programming books I'd bought secondhand and energy drink cans that tracked my sleep deprivation. While my former classmates posted Instagram stories from their European gap years, I was writing code until my eyes burned and my fingers cramped. The first few months nearly broke me. There were nights I lay on Sarah's couch, stomach growling because I'd skipped meals to afford a new programming course, wondering if my parents were right. Was I just another delusional kid who'd thrown away guaranteed success for a pipe dream? But every small victory kept me going. The first time I fixed a bug that had stumped me for days. The morning I woke up and realized I'd dreamed in code. The satisfaction of watching something I'd created from nothing actually work. These moments were mine, earned with my own sweat and stubbornness, not inherited or gifted. Winter in Boston hits different when you can't afford proper heat. I learned to code wearing fingerless gloves, my breath visible in the weak light of my laptop screen. Sarah would find me some mornings, passed out at my makeshift desk, and throw her own blanket over my shoulders before heading to her job at a nonprofit. "You know you're insane, right?" she said one particularly frigid morning, handing me coffee that was more sugar than caffeine the way I needed it after another all-nighter. "Sanity is overrated," I mumbled, reviewing the code I'd written in a sleep-deprived haze. "Besides, insane people don't build apps that actually function." She peered at my screen, where I was putting finishing touches on my first real project, a productivity app that used gamification to help people build better habits. "This is actually really good, Alex. Like, I would use this." "You think?" Hope crept into my voice despite my exhaustion. "I know people in tech from my nonprofit work. Want me to show this around?" That conversation changed everything. Within a month, Sarah's contact, a senior developer at a Boston startup called Technova, had not only downloaded my app but wanted to meet me. I borrowed Sarah's only business outfit, which was 2 sizes too big, and showed up at their office feeling like a kid playing dress-up. Marcus Webb, the CTO, didn't seem to notice my ill-fitting clothes. He was too busy grilling me about my code architecture, my problem-solving process, and how I'd learned everything. By the end of the interview, he offered me a position as a junior developer. "The salary's not much," he admitted. $45,000 to start, but you'll learn more here in 6 months than most people do in 4 years of college." 45,000 might as well have been 45 million. I accepted on the spot. My first day at Technova, I arrived an hour early and spent the time in the bathroom, trying to calm my nerves. The office wasn't fancy exposed brick, communal desks, and a kitchen stocked with the startup staples of energy drinks and instant ramen. But to me, It was validation. Proof that I could build a life without my family's money or connections. The learning curve was vertical. I was the youngest on the team, the only one without a computer science degree, and definitely the only one who'd been disowned by their billionaire family. But Marcus saw something in me and became an unexpected mentor. "You code angry," he told me one evening when we were both working late. "Like you're trying to prove something with every line." "Maybe I am," I admitted, not looking up from my screen. Good. Angry coders change the world. Comfortable coders just maintain it. Under Marcus's guidance, I grew from junior developer to team lead in 18 months. I absorbed everything, not just coding, but product development, user experience, market analysis. While my parents had taught me to protect old wealth, Marcus taught me to create new value. Technova specialized in building platforms for content creators, and I became obsessed with the creator economy. Here were millions of people turning their passions into livelihoods, building audiences and businesses with nothing but talent and technology. It was the antithesis of Hamilton and Reed's Old Boys Club approach to success. 2 years into my tenure, I proposed a new product, a comprehensive platform that would help creators manage everything from content scheduling to revenue optimization. The board was skeptical. The creator economy was still seen as a fad by many traditional investors. "Let me build a prototype," I pleaded. "Give me 3 months in a small team. If it doesn't show promise, I'll drop it." Marcus backed me, and I got my chance. Those 3 months were the most intense of my life. My team and I practically lived in the office, surviving on takeout and determination. I coded until my vision blurred, refined features based on hundreds of creator interviews, and rebuilt the entire architecture twice when we discovered better approaches. The prototype exceeded everyone's expectations. Not only did it work, but we already had a waiting list of beta testers eager to try it. The board greenlit full development, and suddenly I was leading Technova's most ambitious project. Success has a way of traveling through the grapevine, even to ears that pretend not to listen. I learned through LinkedIn that Hamilton and Reed had started a digital transformation initiative, years behind their competitors. My father had hired consultants at astronomical fees to modernize systems I could have updated in my sleep. The irony wasn't lost on me. While they paid millions to play catch-up, I was building the future with a team of misfits and dreamers who believed in creation over preservation. The platform launched and exploded beyond our wildest projections. Within 6 months, we had 50,000 active users and were processing millions in creator revenue. Technova's valuation tripled. Job offers from Silicon Valley giants started flooding my inbox. But I had bigger plans. "You're leaving?" Marcus asked when I finally worked up the courage to tell him. We were sharing beers on the office roof, watching Boston's skyline light up against the dusk. "Not leaving," I corrected. "Graduating. You taught me to code angry. Now I need to build angry." He smiled, the proud look of a teacher watching a student surpass them. "What's the company name?" "NovaForge Interactive, a platform for creators, by creators. Everything Technova does, but deeper, broader, more integrated. We're going to democratize digital entrepreneurship." I've got 5 developers ready to jump ship with me, all people who believe in the vision. Plus, Sarah, she's finishing her MBA and wants to handle operations. Marcus clinked his beer against mine. Hamilton and Reed's loss keeps being the tech world's gain. With my savings, a small angel investment from Marcus, and sheer determination. NovaForge was born in a cramped co-working space in Cambridge. We couldn't afford fancy offices or catered lunches, but we had something more valuable, a mission that mattered, and the freedom to pursue it without legacy baggage. Building a startup from scratch is like trying to assemble a plane while flying it. Every day brought new challenges, server crashes, funding crunches, competitor threats, team conflicts. But every day also brought growth, innovation, and the intoxicating possibility of creating something transformative. Sarah proved invaluable, her nonprofit background giving her insights into community building that most tech companies missed. While competitors focused on features, we focused on people, Our platform wasn't just tools, it was empowerment. You know what you're building, right? Sarah said one night as we reviewed user testimonials. Story after story of creators who'd quit soul-crushing jobs to pursue their passions using our platform. You're building what your parents denied you, the freedom to choose your own path. She was right. Every creator we empowered was a small victory against the rigid hierarchies that families like mine perpetuated. We weren't just disrupting an industry, we were disrupting a mindset. Year 1 was survival. Year 2 was growth. By year 3, NovaForge had become a force. We'd raised Series A funding at a valuation that made those Silicon Valley job offers look quaint. Our platform powered hundreds of thousands of creators, processing over 1 billion in annual transactions. I still lived modestly, rolling profits back into the company. My apartment was bigger than Sarah's couch, but nothing extravagant. Designer clothes and luxury cars held no appeal. I'd seen how golden cages were built. Every dollar saved was a dollar that could fund another feature, hire another developer, or support another creator's dream. The tech press started noticing the 28-year-old building the future of the creator economy. From 0 to 100 milliliter NovaForge's meteoric rise. Articles that carefully omitted my background, focusing on the rags to riches narrative without mentioning the particular riches I'd walked away from. I was debugging code on a typical Thursday evening when my phone buzzed with a number I hadn't seen in 6 years. My mother's contact photo, a professional headshot from a charity gala, stared up at me. I let it go to voicemail. The second call came an hour later. Then a text. Alexandra, this is urgent. Please answer. Victoria Hamilton never said please. I called back, my heart hammering despite myself. Her voice, when she answered, had lost its cutting edge. Alexandra, thank you for returning my call. What do you want, mother? A pause. In the background, I heard voices tense, urgent. We need to meet. It's about the firm. I have no interest in Hamilton and Reed. The firm is in trouble. The words came out rushed, desperate. We need help. Financial help. I almost laughed. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. And you're calling me? You're still family, she said, the words sounding foreign in her mouth. Despite everything, you're still a Hamilton. I stopped being a Hamilton the night you threw me out in the rain. Please. There it was again. That word she'd probably used less than a dozen times in her life. Just one meeting, tomorrow, at the office, if you ever cared about your grandfather's legacy. She knew exactly which button to push. Grandfather William had been the only one who'd encouraged my curiosity about technology, sneaking me programming books when my parents weren't looking. He'd died when I was 15, but not before whispering, build something that matters, Alexandra. Don't just preserve, create. One meeting, I agreed. Tenna, don't be late. I ended the call and stared at my reflection in the dark window. Tomorrow. I'd walk back into the building I'd been banished from. But this time, I wouldn't be the failure they'd cast out. I'd be the success they needed. The Hamilton and Reed building stood like a monument to old money limestone and marble. Brass fixtures polished by decades of ambitious hands. I paused at the entrance, remembering the last time I'd walked through these doors as an intern who'd just discovered her real passion. Now I returned in simple black jeans and a blazer, my NovaForge badge still clipped to my laptop bag. The security guard did a double take when I signed in. Mine Hamilton, it's been a while. Yes, George, it has. The elevator ride to the top floor felt like traveling through time. Everything was exactly as I remembered, the wood paneling, the oil paintings of stern-faced partners, the hushed atmosphere of a place where millions were moved with whispers. The boardroom doors opened to reveal my family arranged like a tribunal. My father sat at the head of the table, gray threading through his hair where none had been before. My mother flanked his right, her perfect posture unable to hide the tension in her shoulders. James occupied the left. His smirk evolved into something harder, more bitter. And scattered around the table were the senior partners, men and women I'd known since childhood. all wearing expressions that ranged from curiosity to desperation. Alexandra, my father said, standing. He extended a hand as if we were opposing council meeting for negotiations. I didn't take it. Let's skip the pleasantries, I said, choosing a seat at the opposite end of the table. You said the firm was in trouble. Talk. Victoria's jaw tightened at my tone, but she held her tongue. My father cleared his throat and activated the presentation screen. What followed was a masterclass in corporate decline. Hamilton and Reed had failed to adapt. While competitors embraced legal tech, automated processes, and digital transformation, they'd clung to traditional methods. Clients had migrated to more innovative firms. Revenue was down 60% over 3 years. They were hemorrhaging talent to startups offering equity instead of just salaries. We've tried consultants, Richard admitted, the words clearly costing him. Spent millions on recommendations that haven't moved the needle. The truth is, we need more than advice. We need capital. How much, I asked, though I'd already done the math. 5 million would stop the bleeding. James interjected. 7 would let us transform. And you're asking me because... The partners exchanged glances. Finally, Margaret Reed, Marcus Reed's daughter and the firm's CFO, spoke up. Because every bank we've approached sees us as a dying model. Traditional lenders won't touch us. Private equity wants to gut us and sell the pieces. You're our last option. I let the silence stretch, savoring it. 6 years ago, they'd had all the power. Now the scales had tipped so dramatically it was almost poetic. You want me to give you $7 million, I said slowly. To save the company that disowned me for having the audacity to see the future you're now desperately trying to catch up to. Alexandra, my mother started, but I held up a hand. I'm not finished. You called me a failure. Said I'd come crawling back. Told me I was choosing childish dreams over real power. I stood, pacing to the window that overlooked the city. Look outside. Half those buildings run on technology my company powers. The childish dreams you mocked are worth more than this entire firm. We were wrong, my father said quietly. It might have been the first time I'd ever heard him admit that. We were so focused on preserving the past that we couldn't see the future you were building. Pretty words, I replied, turning back to face them. But I'm not interested in apologies. I'm interested in justice. What do you want? Victoria asked, fear creeping into her voice. I smiled, the kind of smile I'd learned from watching them destroy opponents in court. I don't want to lend you money. I want to buy you. The room erupted, partners shouting over each other, James slamming his hand on the table, my mother going pale. Only my father remained still, studying me with what might have been respect. A full acquisition? I continued once the chaos died down. NovaForge Interactive buys Hamilton and Reed. We integrate your legal expertise into our platform, creating the first fully digital legal services marketplace for creators and startups. You become the legal backbone of the creator economy. That's insane, James sputtered. We're not some startup you can just absorb. No, I agreed. You're a failing legacy business that's 12 months from bankruptcy. I'm offering you a lifeline, the chance to transform into something relevant, something that matters. And if we refuse, Margaret asked, then you fail. Spectacularly and publicly. Your clients finish migrating to competitors. Your partners jump ship. The Hamilton and Reed name becomes a cautionary tale about the dangers of resisting change. I paused, meeting each of their eyes. Or you take my offer and become part of building the future instead of desperately clinging to the past. My father leaned back in his chair, and for the first time in my life, I saw him look truly vulnerable. What are your terms? Full acquisition at a valuation of $10 million generous, considering your actual worth. Current partners can stay on as salaried employees, but NovaForge maintains full control. The Hamilton and Reed name remains for brand recognition, but as a subsidiary of NovaForge. And us, Victoria asked quietly. Your family. You work for me, I said simply. You want to keep your positions. Prove you can adapt. Show me you can serve creators with the same passion you served corporations. Demonstrate that you've learned what I knew 6 years ago, that the future belongs to those who build, not those who inherit. The conference room fell silent. I could see them processing, calculating, realizing that their options were binary: submit to the child they'd cast out or watch everything crumble. You have 12 hours to decide, I announced, heading for the door. My lawyers will send over the full proposal within the hour. Oh, and one more thing: the signing ceremony, if you agree, will be held in the same room where you told me I was choosing to be a failure. Seems fitting, don't you think? I left them in that boardroom, their dynasty's fate resting in hands they'd once deemed unworthy. The elevator ride down felt like victory, but it was a complex triumph. I hadn't wanted to destroy them, I'd wanted to transform them, to drag them into the future they'd been too proud to see. Sarah was waiting in the lobby, having insisted on being nearby in case I needed backup. She took one look at my face and grinned. So, how did it feel? Like justice, I admitted, but also like responsibility. If they accept, we're not just acquiring a company, we're acquiring a chance to prove that innovation can redeem even the most stubborn institutions. We walked out together into the Boston afternoon. The city looked different somehow, not as something to conquer or escape, but as a canvas for creation. My phone buzzed with emails from my team, updates on new features, creator success stories, the future we were building, one line of code at a time. That evening, I sat in my apartment, laptop open to NovaForge's dashboard. We'd crossed 2 million active users that day. Creators around the world were building businesses, supporting families, and chasing dreams on infrastructure we'd built from nothing but determination and vision. My phone rang at 9:47 p.m. My father's voice was steady but defeated. "We'll take your offer." "Smart choice," I replied. "My lawyers will be there at 9 tomorrow with the papers." "Alexandra," he said before I could hang up, "your grandfather would be proud. You didn't just build something, you built something that matters." I ended the call without responding, but his words echoed. Grandfather William had seen what my parents couldn't: that creation always trumps preservation, that the future belongs to those brave enough to imagine it differently. The signing ceremony was everything I'd envisioned. The same conference room where they'd mapped out my predetermined future became the place where I redefined theirs. My parents signed with the Mont Blanc pen they'd given me for my 18th birthday, the one I'd left behind when I walked out. "Welcome to NovaForge," I said once the ink dried. "We have a lot of work to do." The integration wasn't smooth. Old guard partners resisted new methods. My brother struggled with reporting to someone he'd always seen as competition. My mother had to swallow her pride every time she attended a meeting I led. But slowly, something beautiful happened. The younger associates, freed from rigid hierarchies, flourished. We launched LegalForge, a platform that democratized legal services for creators and small businesses. Former Hamilton and Reed lawyers found purpose in serving clients who were building dreams, not just protecting wealth. My father, to his credit, adapted fastest. He threw himself into understanding our technology, often staying late to learn from our developers. One evening, I found him debugging a smart contract template, frustrated but determined. "This is harder than Latin," he muttered, not noticing me. "But more useful," I offered, sitting beside him. "Here, let me show you." We worked side by side for hours, and for the first time since childhood, it felt like we were on the same team. Not father and daughter, not boss and employee, but two people building something together. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, still staring at the screen. "Not for wanting to protect the family legacy, but for not seeing that you were creating a new one." "The legacy was never the problem," I replied. "It was the cage that came with it." NovaForge continued to grow, with LegalForge becoming our fastest expanding division. We went public on my 30th birthday, with a valuation that made those early struggles in Sarah's apartment seem like another lifetime. But I never forgot those nights coding in fingerless gloves, surviving on ramen and determination. Every creator we empowered, every dream we enabled, was a reminder that freedom, true freedom, comes from building your own path. Standing at the window of our new headquarters, looking out at a city full of possibilities, I thought about that girl who'd walked into a storm with nothing but a backpack and conviction. She'd been called a failure for choosing uncertainty over security, dreams over dynasty. I smiled, watching the sunset paint Boston in shades of gold and possibility. They'd called me a failure, but I'd built an empire of creators, dreamers, and builders who proved every day that the greatest risk isn't in failing, it's in never trying to fly. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another 1,000 creators had joined our platform that day. Another 1,000 people choosing to build rather than inherit, to create rather than preserve. They called me a failure, I whispered to the city lights. I call this victory. The Hamilton name still graced a building in Boston's financial district, but now it stood for something different. Not old money protecting itself, but new ideas lifting others. Not a cage of expectations, but a launch pad for dreams. And in the end, that transformation was worth more than any inheritance they could have given me. Because money can be lost, companies can fail, but the courage to build your own path, that's a fortune no one can take away. My mother found me in my office late one evening, a year after the acquisition. She knocked something she'd never done in our old life. Am I interrupting? Just reviewing creator metrics, I said, gesturing for her to sit. Southeast Asia is exploding. We might need to open an office in Singapore. She sat carefully, like she was still learning how to exist in this new dynamic. I wanted to discuss the pro bono program for creators facing legal challenges. You want to expand it? I want to lead it. The determination in her voice surprised me. I've spent my career protecting the powerful. Maybe it's time I protected the dreamers. I studied her, this woman who'd once embodied everything I'd rebelled against. Why? Because I see it now. She admitted. What you saw all along, that kid in Thailand using our platform to support his family with digital art, he's worth more than a dozen corporate mergers. That single mother in Detroit who built a tutoring empire from her laptop, she's the future you were talking about. And it only took losing everything to see it. No, she corrected. It took watching you build everything to understand it. We approved the pro bono expansion that night, working together on something that mattered. It wasn't forgiveness, some wounds cut too deep for that. But it was progress, transformation. Proof that even the most rigid structures could learn to bend. James took longer to come around. His pride had always been wrapped up in being the chosen successor, the one who stayed loyal. But watching creators half his age build million-dollar businesses on our platform humbled him in ways failure never could. I get it now, he told me during a company retreat. We were watching a panel of successful creators share their stories, a former janitor who now ran a cooking empire, a disabled veteran whose gaming channel supported dozens of employees. You didn't reject the family, you expanded it. Family isn't about blood or buildings, I replied. It's about shared values, common dreams. Every creator on our platform is family because we believe the same thing, that anyone should be able to build their own destiny. He nodded, and for the first time since childhood, my brother looked at me with respect instead of resentment. Think you could teach me to code? Start with Python, I suggested. It's forgiving for beginners. Like you, he asked with a small smile. I'm working on it. The financial press loved our story. From riches to rags to revolutionary. The heiress who disrupted her own dynasty. But they missed the real narrative. This wasn't about revenge or redemption. It was about revelation. The simple truth that building something new always beats maintaining something old. Hamilton and Reed's transformation became a case study in business schools. How a century-old firm reinvented itself by embracing the very changes it had resisted. How hierarchy gave way to innovation, preservation to creation, tradition to transformation. But for me, the real victory was smaller and larger than any headline. It was the message from a creator in Bangladesh who'd escaped poverty through our platform. The email from a grandfather who'd connected with his grandchildren by starting a woodworking channel. The note from a Hamilton and Reed associate thanking me for showing her that law could be about enabling dreams, not just protecting assets. 5 years after that rainy night when I'd been cast out as a failure, I stood before a packed auditorium at MIT, delivering a commencement address. In the audience sat my parents, my brother, Sarah, Marcus, and hundreds of young minds ready to build their own futures. They'll call you dreamers, I told those eager faces. They'll say you're naive, idealistic, impractical. They'll offer you predetermined paths and golden cages, telling you that's what success looks like. But I'm here to tell you that the greatest success is building something that didn't exist before you imagined it. Some of you will come from privilege, like I did. Others will come from nothing. But in the end, what matters isn't what you inherit. It's what you create. The code you write. The problems you solve. The dreams you enable in others. That's your real legacy. So when they call you a failure for choosing the uncertain path, remember this: every great transformation begins with someone willing to fall. And if you're going to fall forward, fall toward your dreams, fall into the future you're building. Because on the other side of that fall isn't failure, it's flight. The applause was thunderous, but I barely heard it. I was thinking about that girl in the rain, backpack heavy with doubt but heart light with possibility. She'd thought she was walking away from power. Instead, she'd walked toward it, the real power that comes from building something from nothing, from enabling others to do the same. After the speech, my family waited by the stage. We weren't the Hamiltons of old, pristine, powerful, untouchable. We were something better, human, flawed, but finally free. Proud of you, my father said simply. We all are, my mother added, and meant it. James just grinned and showed me his phone. My first Python program. It's terrible, but it works. That's how everyone starts, I assured him. Terrible but functional. We walked out together into the Cambridge afternoon, not as the dynasty we'd been born into, but as the family we'd chosen to become. Behind us, hundreds of new graduates streamed out, ready to build their own paths. Some would fail, many would struggle, but all of them would be free to try. And in the end, that freedom to fail, to fall, to fly was the greatest inheritance I could offer. Not a name or a fortune or a predetermined future, but the simple, revolutionary idea that anyone could build something that matters. They'd called me a failure once. Now I called myself something else, a builder. And I was just getting started. The story could end here, with transformation and triumph neatly packaged. But real life doesn't wrap up so cleanly. And the most interesting chapters often come after the credits should roll. NovaForge went through its trials. A competitor backed by massive venture capital tried to clone our model. Key developers were poached. Server crashes during crucial moments tested our resilience, but each challenge only strengthened our resolve and our community. The creator economy we'd helped build faced its own evolution. Platforms rose and fell. Algorithms changed. New technologies emerged. But through it all, NovaForge adapted, evolved, stayed true to its mission of empowering individual creators over institutional gatekeepers. LegalForge became an industry standard. Law schools started teaching courses on creator economy law. Traditional firms scrambled to build competing platforms, but they lacked what we had: authenticity, understanding, and genuine belief in the creators we served. My relationship with my family continued to evolve. There were setbacks, old patterns reasserting themselves during stressful times, but there was also growth, understanding, and eventually, something approaching wholeness. Not the family we'd been, but the family we'd chosen to become. Sarah, my constant through it all, became NovaForge's CEO when I stepped back to focus on product vision and creator advocacy. Her journey from nonprofit warrior to tech leader was its own inspiration, proof that paths could be forged from anywhere. Remember when I was sleeping on your couch? I asked her one day as we reviewed quarterly reports showing record growth. Remember, I still have the indent to prove it, she laughed. Though I prefer this office to that apartment? I don't know, I mused. There was something pure about those days, just the code, the dream, and instant ramen. You can still have instant ramen, she pointed out. You just choose not to. She was right. Choice, that was what it all came down to. The choice to leave, to build, to return, to transform. Every creator on our platform was making that same choice daily, betting on themselves instead of traditional paths. Years passed. Technologies changed. Markets shifted. But the core truth remained. Creation beats preservation. Courage beats comfort. And the future belongs to those brave enough to build it. I still code sometimes, late at night when the office is quiet. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because there's still magic in making something from nothing, in solving problems with elegant solutions, in building bridges to futures we can barely imagine. The Hamilton and Reed building still stands in Boston's financial district, but now it houses something different. Not just lawyers protecting old wealth, but advocates enabling new dreams. The portraits of Stern partners share walls with success stories of creators who started with nothing but determination. My grandfather's portrait hangs in my office at Nova Forge. Sometimes I catch his painted eyes and remember his whispered words. Build something that matters. I like to think he'd approve of what his legacy became, not a rigid dynasty, but a launching pad for thousands of other builders. The rain still falls in Boston, washing the streets clean and starting fresh, but I no longer stand in it like an exile. Now I watch it from windows I've earned, in buildings filled with people choosing their own paths, creating their own futures. They called me a failure for walking away from certainty. But certainty is overrated. It's in the uncertain spaces, the unmapped territories, the paths not yet taken, that the future gets built. And every day, with every creator who takes that leap, we prove that the only real failure is never trying at all. This is my story, not of revenge, but of revelation. Not of destroying the old, but of building the new. Not of proving my parents wrong, but of proving that there's more than one way to be right. And if you're reading this, wondering whether to take your own leap, whether to choose the uncertain path over the predetermined one, let me tell you what I wish someone had told me that night in the rain. The fall is scary, the journey is hard, the doubts are real. But the freedom to build your own future, that's worth everything. They called me a failure, I called it the beginning. And the best part? The story's far from over. Every day brings new creators, new dreams, new futures being built by people who refuse to accept that the only way forward is the way it's always been. That's the real legacy, not a name on a building or money in a bank, but the ripple effect of empowerment, the exponential impact of enabling others to build. One creator becomes 10, becomes 100, becomes a movement that reshapes how we think about work, value, and success itself. So here's to the failures, the dreamers, the builders. Here's to everyone who's been told their path is wrong, their dreams too big, their ideas too bold. Here's to choosing uncertainty over security, creation over preservation, freedom over fortune. Because in the end, they can call you whatever they want. What matters is what you build with your own hands, the futures you enable for others, and the courage to keep creating even when the whole world tells you to stop. They called me a failure. I built an empire of dreamers, and every single day, I'd make the same choice again. The storm that cast me out became the wind beneath my wings. The family that rejected me became the first of many I'd transform. The failure they predicted became the foundation for thousands of successes. Not bad for a girl who chose code over contracts, dreams over dynasties, and freedom over everything else. Not bad at all.